A fierce battle has just taken place in Kanwa, a village 100 miles south of Delhi, between Turco-Mongols and Hindu forces. The Hindus are crushed, and the Mongols erect a tower of 10,000 skulls of their fallen enemies to drive fear into the hearts of any that might dare to raise arms again. This is the story of the Mughal Babur, or the Mongol tiger, and his conquest of India. Zahir-ud-Din Muhammad is born in the Fergana Valley of modern-day Uzbekistan, over 1,000 miles away from the focus of our story in India. Zahir's fellow Mongols have trouble pronouncing his Arabic name, so most of those close to him refer to him by his nickname, Babur. Though heavily influenced by the local Islamic Persian culture of his native kingdom, he is of Mongol ancestry, hence his exoname combined with his nickname, combining to become the Mughal Babur. Mughal being the corrupted Persian pronunciation of Mongol, and Babur being the Persian word for tiger. But Babur is not just any Mongol. On his father's side, he is the third great-grandson of Timur, the founder of the Timurid Empire of modern-day Afghanistan and Iran, one of the most powerful and influential Central Asian states in history. On his mother's side, Babur is the 10th great-grandson of Genghis Khan himself. I mean, a bloodline doesn't get much more badass than that, and like his ancestors, it would seem Babur would not escape his destiny of becoming one of history's great conquerors himself. During this era, Central Asia is largely ruled by Mongols that descend from either Timur or Genghis Khan, of which Babur is a descendant of both. They constantly vie for control over the region, with never-ending skirmishes sprouting along territorial borders. With the death of his father, Babur ascends the Fergana throne at just 11 years old, and is quickly forced into war with his uncles and cousins. For his remaining teenage years, he sees a number of both victories and defeats, but is ultimately left with nothing, forced to flee for his life into the mountains. Babur writes in his 10 years in exile,
"I endured much poverty and humiliation, no country or hope of one. May no person be as ravaged, lovesick, and humiliated as I."
Babur is given a lifeline after the death of his paternal uncle, the ruler of Kabul in modern-day Afghanistan. He crosses the snowy Hindu Kush mountains, and upon arrival to Afghanistan, and with the support of locals who view the new ruler, Mughal Beg, as a usurper, wrestles away the crown back under his family name. Having inched his way closer towards India, it is here in Kabul that the seed of the idea to conquer Hindustan is planted.
My desire for Hindustan had been constant. It was in the month of Shaban, the sun being in Aquarius, that we rode out of Kabul for Hindustan.
India is completely foreign to Babur and his men, many of whom are said to have pleaded with Babur to abandon their campaign due to the hot and humid weather. A drastic change in climate from the Central Asian steppe that the semi-nomadic pastoralist Mongols are unaccustomed to.
Oh, it's hot.
To the east, the Delhi Sultanate is a great and powerful empire that at its height covered large swaths of territory in modern-day India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Nepal. However, after 3 centuries of dominance over the Indian subcontinent, the state is in decline. The final chapter of the empire's story begins during the rule of Ibrahim Lodi, a prince that assumes the title of Sultan after his father's death. Ibrahim lacks support from regional chiefs and has a knack for making enemies through removing senior officers from positions of power, many of whom have strong relationships with powerful Persian and Afghan noblemen. With the aid of disgruntled local chiefs and a fragmented central government, Babur's story in India begins. Originally, Babur's aim was only to expand his rule to Punjab, mainly to fulfill the legacy of his ancestor Timur, since it had once been part of his vast empire. However, upon his arrival, he is bombarded with solicitations from various influential individuals throughout India that want Ibrahim Lodi, the ruler of the Delhi Sultanate, deposed. The most notable of them is Daulat Khan Lodi, the governor of Punjab. Babur joins the governor's forces in Lahore and burns the city. Their combined forces of 30,000 march on Delhi, but are unable to take the well-defended city. Daulat Khan Lodi then decides he's going to backstab Babur and switches sides back to the Delhi Sultanate, even though he's the very person that brought Babur and his Mongols into this mess to attack the Sultanate. When Babur confronts him about the betrayal, Daulat quickly surrenders.
Whose side are you on, anyway?
In exchange for his life, Daulat resigns as governor and proclaims Babur master of Punjab, and he officially establishes a foothold into India. In 1526, Babur marches on to Delhi and there meets Ibrahim Lodi's numerically superior army of 100,000 soldiers and 100 elephants. Babur uses the tactic of Tulunga, encircling Ibrahim Lodi's army and forcing it to face artillery fire directly. This is one of the earliest battles involving gunpowder firearms and field artillery in the Indian subcontinent. The artillery fire startles Lodi's war elephants, causing them to trample large numbers of his own men. This marks the moment of the beginning of the decline in the use of war elephants throughout India, where they had previously been utilized for millennia. Ibrahim Lodi is killed in battle, thus ending the Lodi dynasty.
By the grace of Almighty God, this difficult task has made easy to me, and that mighty army, in the space of a half day, was laid to dust.
Despite defeating the supposed rulers of northern India in the Delhi Sultanate, the reality was that the kingdom had long already been in decline prior to Babur's arrival. So much so that some historians argue that the kingdom of Mewar, ruled by Rana Sanga, may have surpassed the Sultanate in influence and power. It's noteworthy that Mewar is a Hindu kingdom, representing a more indigenous culture and political structure in comparison with many of the Islamic states that dominated northern India for much of history. While Mughal forces occupy Delhi, Rana Sanga's forces expand towards Agra, setting the stage for much greater conflict to come. Sanga besieges Bayana, defeating the Muslim defenders, scattering large numbers of Babur's men. It's a devastating loss for the Mughals. With his enemies in retreat, Sanga launches an attack on Kanwa. Here, Babur's forces are better prepared for the assault. Sanga, unaccustomed to Mughal defense tactics and gunpowder artillery, utilizes a traditional Indian strategy of blitzing the front line. Mughal musketeers and archers mow down wave after wave of Mewar troops. Eventually, Sanga adapts his strategy and attacks the Mughal flanks with cavalry. There are tremendous losses on both sides. Refusing to continue the attack efforts on Kanwa, many Hindu soldiers defect and surrender to the Mughals. Eventually, Sanga is struck by a bullet and falls unconscious. Leaderless and with their numbers dwindling, the Mewar army falls into disarray and is defeated. In typical Mongol fashion, Babur orders the construction of a great tower of Mewar skulls to be erected, instilling fear in those who might still choose to resist. When Rana Sanga later awakens, he vows for a round 3 grudge match against Babur, but is subsequently poisoned by his own men, who want nothing less than a battle against the Mughals again. Babur would later go on to describe Rana Sanga as the greatest king in Hindustan history. With the kingdom of Mewar defeated, Babur reigns supreme over North India and establishes the Mughal Empire. Over the years, the empire expands its boundaries and at its maximum extent would rule nearly all of modern-day India. The empire ushers in several golden ages for India, fostering unprecedented levels of economic and cultural growth. The Mughals are especially renowned for their architectural achievements, perhaps most exemplified by the construction of the Taj Mahal in 1631. The empire would survive for 330 years until being dismantled by the British East India Company in 1857. Babur's legacy in India is one of a foreign invader, but also a key character in the development of the modern Indian identity through the unification of the subcontinent's various kingdoms and tribes under a single empire, And while Babur is remembered as a violent conqueror, he is also remembered as an acclaimed writer who had a profound love for literature. Books were his most sought-after spoil of war in new conquered lands, and while he initially did not know Old Hindi, his Turkic poetry indicates that he began learning later in life.
I have become a desert wanderer for Islam, having joined battle with infidels and Hindus. I readied myself to become a martyr. God be thanked, I have survived a warrior.